Hi, I'm Susan Wright, and welcome to woolsnob. This is a video webcast about my adventures over a lifetime in the fiber arts, in the fields of knitting, crochet, sewing, spinning, dyeing, and more recently, needlefelting, and other areas of the arts like mosaics and glass fusions. Today is Thursday, December 28th, 2017. I'm coming to you from southeastern Michigan, where it is a balmy 9 degrees Fahrenheit today. When I woke up at 6 a.m., it was minus 11 degrees, a little bit cold for this time of the year. But here we are. It has taken me this entire calendar year to get to the point that I was ready to hit record. And even at that, it took time with my youngest grandson, who will be graduating from college very soon, to actually get this all set up for me. So I'm hoping this works and that when I get this uploaded to YouTube, it actually works. This will be a very low production value recording. I doubt with any words or subtitles, project notes, or anything like that. I'm not active on any social media. If you choose, you can reach me at woolsnob, which is WOOLSNOB, at yahoo.com. I have set up a Ravelry group on which I am not active, and I have also started an Instagram account on which nothing has been posted. I am hoping to remedy that, but so far there's nothing. I'd like to spend a few minutes explaining who I am and why I am here. I started knitting and crocheting at a young age, probably under 10, and I don't know who might have taught me those activities. I've always been very driven to learn things on my own. I do remember one of my grandmothers having a booklet, and it's entirely possible that I taught myself. The SS Kresge's in our town had a good-sized wall of Red Heart yarn, and at that time, back in the 1950s, most of the yarn was 100% wool. And when I was 12, I think I was allowed to take the city bus uptown and to go to Kresge's and to the public library, and I could buy my own yarn. And so all of my knitting for very many years was done with 100% wool yarn. And my passion for untreated wool was thus born. It wasn't until, I'm not sure, 10 or so years ago that superwash even came into being. So it just wasn't my formative experience to work with these yarns. I have nothing against superwash. I'm just as likely as anyone else to purchase these yarns. I honestly don't purchase them for their particular qualities. I purchase them because they're beautiful. I counted recently and I have over 300 skeins in my stash, so I love them. But this podcast is going to be about using protein fibers in their untreated state. And the projects that I talk about and that I hope we can all share will be concentrating exclusively on the use of protein fibers that are untreated. So in my early years, I knit almost exclusively, and my recollection is that I made a lot of household slippers for my family and practically everyone in the neighborhood, because all I knew how to do was garter stitch. And as I got older, somehow discovered a catalog by a company that's still in business called Mary Maxim, and they had these colorwork sweaters that had designs on them of figures. I don't recall exactly what they were, and I don't know what the fiber content was, but they were very popular at the time, and I made many of those. There were it was one yarn shop in our town, and they focused mostly on wool yarn. The brands then were Bernat, Columbia, and Minerva, and the Kresge that had the Red Heart wool yarn in it, and that's pretty much what was available. So again, wool was the focus. When I got into college, I still knit, and that tended to be a lot of scarves for roommates and friends in the dormitory. After college, I got married at 21 and had my son when I was 22, and by then there were some unnatural fibers, Orlan, I'm not sure exactly, but there were some Edith Care fibers available then, and I made a number of sweaters and other garments for him out of those fibers, but did continue to make sweaters for myself and my hub out of primarily wool. We had a small dog when we got married, and I still have one sweater that I made for Tippy out of the wool yarn that I got from Kresge's out of the Red Heart. Still in perfect condition. By the mid 1970s, my in-laws had gifted me with a weaving class at a local weaving shop called the Wild West, which is sadly no longer in existence. And my fiber experience widened, and I grew to love wool in a very different way. And very soon thereafter, I decided to become a full-time professional weaver, which I did. So that has been my life since the mid-1970s. I've been a full-time professional artist, and I spent over 10 years weaving. Some scarves, stoles out of wool, but then turned primarily to warp-faced wool rugs. And my home studio was taken over by 9 looms, from 4 36-inch 2-harness looms to a 48 and a 72-inch 8-harness countermarsh Cranbrook looms, and a 48-inch 8-harness Maycomber. So for more than 10 years, weaving was my life and passion, and I wove exclusively with wool yarns or some slight wool blends that further fueled my passion for wool yarns. Around 1990, the process of weaving did not enthrall me quite as much, so I decided to shift my focus and became a mixed media artist, which was wood that I cut out with power tools and painted in bright, hot tropical colors and embellished with beads and other items that I could nail onto these items that I made, which were clocks and small cabinets, small furniture. And I did that until around 2002. Since that time, I had the first of two hip replacements in 2001. But since 2002, I've been teaching. And primarily, I've been teaching mosaics, knitting, crochet, and other fiber textile arts classes. Color is my main passion. That's primarily what drives me. I still teach mosaics at this point, but at the beginning of the year, I stopped teaching knitting and crochet because that entailed about a 50-mile round-trip drive, which just became tedious for a variety of reasons. But I still consider myself a teacher at heart, and that is a big part of my impetus for this podcast. I have a lot of knowledge and information I've gained over more than 40 years that I still believe is relevant and would like to share. That's the part that I really enjoy, is helping to pass along the information that has been so hard won and transferring those techniques and information to students. And it's easy to do in person. I don't know how easy it's going to be to do it via this kind of format, but that's my aim, and it's what I want to try to do. That's my goal. The particular thing that's driving me to do this is that 5 years ago, the hub and I moved from my hometown, the place where I was born and raised and lived within 5 miles of the hospital where I was born for my entire life, to a small town about 20 miles north. And it has been an extremely difficult and trying transition. I didn't realize how much I identified myself with that town as a product and a being of that town. And moving to this different location in a different county that has a very different political outlook from this very liberal university, major Big Ten university community where I lived for my entire life, has really changed my outlook and my sense of place in the universe. It has been a very difficult transition and disrupted everything about my life. It has thrown me into a depression that has been and continues to be very difficult to work myself out of. I have found myself pulling away from many of the things that I've known and that have been familiar, and withdrawing into a cocoon that I know is not healthy. And one of the major salvations in my life has been the community of artist friends and students that I have built up over my years of teaching. But moving out of my hometown has separated me from much of that. And as I have discovered this internet world, I have come to hope that if I reach out in this manner, that perhaps I can regain a sense of place and sense of self, and not sure what the words are exactly, but I need to put myself back into the world and find out who and where I am in this new location. And I want to try to do it via this medium. I don't expect it will be easy. And I don't say any of this because I am trying to get pity, or I'm looking for attention, or any of those reasons. I'm just trying to explain who I am and why I'm here. That's probably more than enough, and all that I really want to say. What I'd like to do right now is share some projects that I'm working on and explain a little bit about some of the things that I would like for us to share and to work on as time goes on. As I said, we are not going to cover superwash or we're going to focus on non-treated fibers, and there are many of them that are lovely. Not all of them are quite as beautiful as many of the indie dyers are focusing on, but perhaps we can convince some of them, or some of us can focus our efforts on turning some of these fibers into skeins of yarn that are just as beautiful of what's being produced on these superwash yarns. But some of the yarns that I'm going to be working on in the very near future and casting on right after the first of the year are, I just bought some of this shepherd's wool at my local yarn store. It's a beautiful fingering wool that's, I'm not used to this camera idea yet. My grandson just, I'm not used to the backwardness of it, set this up for me yesterday. Here it is, shepherd's wool. By Stonehenge Fiber Mill in northern Michigan. It's a fingering weight. These are 1.6 ounce worsted spun fine wool, 230 yards each, garnet and autumn gold, and I'm going to make socks out of these. There's no nylon in these, but I've not found that to be a particular problem if I'm careful, and I'm not a particularly careful person. I'm basically a klutz, and I tend to wear things out very easily, but I think if one is careful, you can use most anything. These are These are my very favorite socks, and I have a number of pair of them. And this is also my very favorite yarn. It's Brown Sheep Company Lamb's Pride, and I've had these socks for 10 years. The only shoes I wear are Birkenstocks. I don't own any other shoes. I own one pair of leather boots that I'm forced to wear when there's too much snow, and the snow seeps up over the edge of my Birkenstocks. So I have a number of these socks that I make out of the worsted weight. Lamb's Pride worsted, and this was a pattern. I don't remember from who, but what I like about it is that they're knit based on sock anatomy. The cuff, the heel turn, the gusset, the instep, and the toe. And I probably have 10 anyway of these socks, and I just wear them interchangeably. And they're loose, but I wear them as bed socks. I wear them with my Birks, and what I did, rather than worry about ends, was I just left the ends out, and oh dear. Well, I'll get it someday. There. Okay, I left the ends out and twisted them. This is something that weavers mostly do. I just made twisted fringes on the outside and didn't fuss with them at all. So I have little twisted fringes all over the outside. So what's somebody going to say about it? I don't like your twisted fringes, go for it. So I have a bunch of these and wear them interchangeably. I think these are my favorite kind of socks. They keep my feet warmer than any of the many pair of fingering weight superwash socks that I have. I love them. They're pretty, but given the fact that I wear Birks all the time, I don't find them a tremendously functional kind of sock. I make a lot of cowls because I have asthma and need to keep my neck warm. So I make a lot of this was from, what was that book, Cowl Girls? This was just a basic cowl, and I make a lot of these kind of items. This was 100% wool roving kind of yarn from one of the big box craft stores some years ago. They don't tend to produce those anymore. They've just discontinued that type of yarn, and yeah, that's really unfortunate, but I still have a supply of those. But I really like this kind of item and tend to make a lot of these. Another favorite item that I really love making out of wool, and somehow I've lost all of them except for one, and how that happens is a mystery. It's like hangers and socks going missing in the dryer. But this is a pattern I put together that I crochet, and this is again from Lion Brand. This is a slipper. I've done a lot of felting, and I've taught felting a lot over the years, but this is a crocheted booty slipper that I love, and I've got a pattern written out, and I've used it a lot for my students, and because this is felted, it's extremely forgiving. I have a triple layer heel in it, and they're probably, I don't know, 12 to 15 inches long, and then I put them in the washing machine This is not technically felting. Fulling is the term for yarn. As fulling is done, heat, moisture, and agitation are the operative processes that causes this to happen. And these are just great. They're very comfy. I've worn this one practically into oblivion. I don't know what's happened to all the others, but I still wear this one because it's still here, and this is something I will put the pattern together for, because I think this is a great functional item. I've made it with Peyton's Classic Wool, which is a favorite yarn of mine, as well as this Lamb's Pride. Either the worsted, the bulky, or the burly yarn. And I've made this for not little tiny feet, mostly larger children up to men's size. And I've also got a larger version that comes up and is more of a booty kind of house slipper. So that's something else that I make a lot of, and we'll be talking about. I like to make shawls, and this is, I don't know if this yarn is still available, but any worsted weight yarn will do. And this particular yarn, Cascade Alpaca Wool Lana Dioro, my local yarn store, which went out of business early this fall, had this on sale, and I bought quite a bit of it. I probably have 20 skeins. I tend to love odd greens, and this is a shawl that I've been designing. Well, it's a deep triangle. It's on the needles, and I am having difficulty showing, but it's got a lot of textured sections, and I'm now working on a medallion section that I pulled from, oh dear, one of the Barbara Walker books, The Second Treasury. There is so much to learn about backwards images and reflections, and anyway, I love these books. I have a lot of these, and reflections on glasses. These pattern design books, I have them going back to the 70s, but I found this design that I really liked, and that's the design. I don't know how many of you do these same kind of things, but when I was looking at this, there were 15 rows here, and I thought, oh, what a lovely design. It only has 15 rows in it. So I made a copy of it and put it in my knitting bag and thought, wow, what a nice design. It only has 15 rows in it. I can just whip that nice little design up. It only has 15 rows. And I got to the 15 rows and thought, well, that medallion just isn't complete. How can that be? I've got the 15 rows done. But did I ever think to turn the page and look at the fact that it goes down to row 54? No, I never did that. So it's really a 54 row repeat. So, I don't know. I wonder at my own mental confidence frequently. So, I really want to encourage people to start their own designs. It's not as difficult or intimidating as it seems at all. These pattern books are so useful. All it takes is basic math skills, not even algebra, adding and subtracting, and maybe some graph paper, which is available free online. And I've got resources for those, which we will talk about. So this is another project I'm going to be working on and that we will talk about. And I, even after my 60 years of knitting and crochet experience, I still make multitudes of mistakes. I'm human, just like everybody, and I have holes in my brain. And so one of the things that frustrates me is when I look at patterns or I'm reviewing things on Ravelry. There might be 50, 100, 900 people that have made a pattern, and I will look at it, and there might be some that have dissatisfaction with a certain pattern, but I will never see anyone that has the kind of problems that I have, and I keep wondering, am I the only moron on the planet that has this issue? I don't understand. Why do I keep coming across these problems? I don't understand that. So that's something else that I want to address. Maybe not in a pattern-specific way, but I'm sure other people have those kinds of issues. So that's another thing that I wonder a great deal about. This reflection on glasses is strange. This is something else that I do a great deal, and has been a passion of mine for decades. I've been a scrounge and a dumpster diver since my son was very little, and my son is now, he's almost 49, and I've been a sweater scrounger and hoarder for decades, and most of them right now are in giant bins in a storage unit, because at this point my hub and I live in my studio, and we have very limited storage room, so many of my supplies are in storage, and I don't get to them until spring because of the cold weather, and currently there's about 8 inches of snow on the ground, and I don't really have any interest in going to U-Store and fighting the snow. But I recently found this at the thrift store, and it's I think it was like 80-some% wool and a small percent of nylon, and the nylon I'm imagining are the naps. It's a tweed sweater, and what I really liked about it is, number one, that it fit. I'm not a small woman, so it fit, but I really liked the tweed, but I loved the shawl collar. And it's a nice worsted weight. It's black tweed, and it's, well, as I've said, lots to learn. But I like this shawl collar, and it has long sleeves, but it's black tweed, and I don't know. There's something about a black tweed sweater that's awfully monochrome for me. So I had just gotten some of this city tweed. Is that what it's called? I think it's city tweed. All fell on the floor. That beeping is my phone that I'm ignoring. I think this is city tweed from Knit Picks, and it's mostly wool with something else that are, again, the naps. And so I spent way too much time picking back a sleeve. It's the body of this is reverse stockinette, which is interesting, and I am knitting a rib on it to make a it's a drop shoulder, and starting about here I'm going to knit a fitted rib sleeve, and this will, and I'll do this in some stripes, this kind of gold color, and I've got several greens and a kind of a coral color, and to make that more interesting, and then do something else. I'm not sure, maybe crochet, pick up some stitches around this shawl color, which of course is really hard to tell, but it is a lovely shawl color, but again it's awfully black. And maybe you can just pick up a little edge around this shawl color to give it a little more color. One thing that I found quite frustrating about this is the yarn itself. It's a Giorgio Armani, Ralph Lauren, some name designer. I got it on Senior Day for half price, which was $2.99 maybe. It had all these pickies in it that made it scratchy, and that drives me crazy. Not even washing pulls that, they're like little nylon filaments, or I'm not sure what they are, but they drive me buggy. And so I have time. I don't have money, but I have a lot of time. And so I have very fine needle sharp pointed tweezers. And so I spent hours under a very bright light pulling these little picky things out. And by the time I got through, I had a bundle, very loose, but as big as a grapefruit, of these picky little nylon things. And it has made this much softer. That's also my biggest, I don't know, complaint might be too strong a word. I love the beauty and colorings in Noro yarn, but that has the same issue, is that it's just not soft. And when I knit with it, I just don't find it comfortable. So I find myself, after a project, having to sit there with my tweezers pulling out all these little pickies in it. So for the money that it costs, having to pull out all those little bits of annoyance, I don't like it. But for a $2.99 sweater that I will very much enjoy wearing, especially when we have temperatures below 10 degrees, this will be lovely. So these are projects that I really enjoy and want to encourage. I also do a lot with what I call felted wool sweaters. Again, the technical term is fold, and about 10 years ago I did what I call processing of all my wool sweaters. I cut them apart at the seams and separated sleeves from fronts and backs, and cut off collars. If there were any decorative elements like pockets or anything like that, I left them on, but I cut off buttons, and I cut out zippers, and I fold them all. I put them in the washing machine and put them in the dryer. There were more than 500 of them. I killed 2 washing machines and caught 1 dryer on fire in the process. In retrospect, it would have been much smarter had I gone to the laundromat and used the big commercial machines, but hindsight is an amazing thing. It was easier to do it at home, but they're all done now and separated, and I discovered that some of them were just too loosely knit, and I got rid of those, and they're separated in boxes by color, and I've made a number of items with them, but I still have more than a lifetime supply, and that's another project I would like to share and work on. And another passion, and I suppose collecting is a word, hoarding is another word, but I have well over 300 cashmere sweaters that I have accumulated over the decades. And cashmere is an amazing fiber in that it does not felt, at least if it's a quality cashmere, and there are different qualities of cashmere, but all of my sweaters have been washed. I did not cut those apart. Those are intact, but I've got those here in my studio, and I'm ready to start doing something with those. And I know there are those of you out in the world who have similar stashes and need to start doing something with them. So that's another project I want to get working on. I also have another stash of sweaters that I've worked on unraveling and making projects out of over the decades. And I know there are those who started that as a long and working on last year. That's another interest of mine and something I've been doing for decades. I also love needlefelting, and I've taught that for a number of years. Maybe, I'm not sure, 10 years ago, Brother Janome, there's another company came out with needlefelting machines, and I currently have 3 of them. One of them is on loan, but they're 5 and 7 needle machines, and they're quite wonderful because instead of using the 1, 2, or 3 needle hand poking technique with those long pointy needles, which is fun, these machines don't have feed dogs or bobbins or tension, but they use the power of the machine and RPMs to have the needles go up and down very quickly to poke the wool fibers into each other to felt them together. And oh, that is glorious fun. I don't know honestly if those machines are still commercially available the way that they were. I just don't know, but it's really fun to explore. I started spinning in the later 1970s and had a wheel for years, and somewhere along the way, I think 25. When we moved from my hometown 5 years ago, the house that we had lived in, we'd been in for 24 years, and the studio I had was about 700 square feet, but I was a full-time artist, and I needed every inch of that studio for the work that I was making. I had woodworking tools and vacuum system and spray booth, and I couldn't even keep my loom in the studio at that time. It just was, there was too much sawdust and overspray, and there just wasn't room. So I did move my loom inside, but I think that I got rid of my spinning wheel at that time. But I had been spinning for quite some time, but it's been a while. But I just recently purchased another spinning wheel, and just a month ago. I haven't even started spinning on it yet, but I'm very excited to do that. I'm especially excited because it came unfinished, and I painted it green and coral. So that's really exciting. And I have a lot of roving because I use that for needle felting. So I've got a very big box of roving available. So I'm looking forward to getting started on that again. I still teach mosaics and have a number of students who come here to my studio, which is not a fiber art, but it lets me explore my love of color in a way that nothing else does. And I also, I recently sold my glass fusion studio, but that is available to me anytime that I choose, and that also is a a wonderful way to explore color, and I will share some of those projects with you. I think I say and so way too many times. I will work on that. It's getting dark. It's time to stop. My grandson Jacob showed me how to publish this on YouTube. I hope it works, but I'm not sure. I will be back soon. Again, the only way to reach me is at woolsnob@yahoo.com. There is a Ravelry group called Woolsnob. If you try to message me on Ravelry, I more than likely will not answer that. There are other, I am known by other names, and if you happen to locate me as any of those, I likely will not answer. I'm not very social in that regard, quite honestly. I'm trying. I am. I guess that's it. I hope to see you again soon. I don't know anything about down bars editing. I'm just going to put this out and hope for the best. Take care.